Hey guys, so today we are answering a subscriber question, and the question in question was, Frederick, what did your previous coworkers teach you that made you rethink the way that you were thinking as a junior developer? So let's get into it. This was posted on one of my videos where I tried to explain basically, well, I kind of just touched on it in passing. I think I was talking about rendering and like why YouTubers don't really talk about rendering. But the thing that I mentioned was that there was a time, once upon a time, when I had certain ways of thinking about software development, and as a junior, I can imagine. I mean, I see it all the time, even in the comments sections, and I see it when I talk to people on the at my company, junior developers. This red thread is it's a very clear red thread between, well, experience and the value system of the developer. And basically that was the question, like, what was the thing that you were taught that changed the way that you were thinking, and how were you thinking before? So I'll try to relay this in the best way that I can. And the best way I can explain it is that when I left the university, I had been drilled to believe that test-driven development, best practices, and writing flawless software is the main goal of a software developer. I believe this to almost a religious extent, where I was almost a zealot. Well, I kind of was, let's be honest here. I read all the books that I could get my hands on. I listened to all the tech talks, and I was convinced that microservices was the best solution for every single problem. I was convinced that having 100% unit test coverage was the way to go, and anything below that was, not that great. All these sorts of things, right? Because, you listen to all these public speakers, and they usually talk in a very persuasive manner, right? And when you don't know any better, you kind of consume that as the truth. So after getting my first job not my first job, but getting onto my first big project at a larger company, I started trying to apply these practices. I was always in the beginning I was very confused, because I got the sensation of resistance from my more experienced coworkers, and I couldn't really understand why somebody who's been working for like 15, some of them had been working for like 20 plus years, how can they resist best practice? I mean, this is so obvious, right? Aren't they watching? That's what I was thinking, Aren't they watching all the same videos that I'm watching? Aren't they looking at like Martin Fowler and listening to what he's saying? I mean, he's really experienced, right? Why aren't we doing the same sorts of things, right? And the thing that they taught me, I learned quite a lot of stuff, but the biggest learnings was for sure, like they showed me that the problem with being an idealist, the problem with pushing for best practices is that is simply not reality. The systems that you work with, I mean, they are like in my case, the system was super large. If I came in and I said like, well, there's a bunch of legacy here, let's rewrite that in a more modern approach or a more modern language, the investment that we would have to make in order to make that happen would be enormous. And let's think about that, because that means that every single time, I mean, a new best approach comes out every 6 months, maybe let's say every year. Then you're basically rewriting your system every year, or you're approaching a problem from a new direction every single year, and that's simply not feasible. So the thing that they truly taught me that was a bit of an eye-opener was that the state of the code is a reflection of the company itself. And what I mean by that is that if you are working for Google, then maybe you can be on the bleeding edge of every single thing, in every single regard. I honestly think that is fairly unfeasible even for Google or Facebook or whichever super IT company you want to talk about. But basically, the code is simply in the state that the company needs often. It's simply in the state that the company has it's in a state which the company is a reflection of how the company operates. An example is that if your stakeholders come in and they say, "Whoa, shit, we have this deadline. You need to ship this by Friday," and you have no choice. The deadline is what the deadline is, and although you may know of a better solution, you simply don't have the time to do that. Because nothing is more important to the company than shipping the feature on time. That's the thing that I didn't understand, because in my mind it was about writing the best software that I could write. And that's the thing that I didn't understand. I made programming about programming, just as mathematics is about mathematics. But programming is not about programming. Programming is about solving business problems. That's the reason why you try to write software in the first place. Remember, you're being paid to solve a company's problems. That's what I didn't understand. And whenever I started kicking up a fuss about, we should do this in a better way, we should do this way and this way, my senior coworkers, they kind of just nodded and said, yeah, you're absolutely right. But the problem is that the deadline is what the deadline is. And there are ways that we can solve this that are not perfect, but they will work and they will be sustainable. And good enough in this scenario is, from the company's perspective, a better investment. And remember, we are making code on behalf of the company. We are basically translating the requirements and the needs of a person or like a stakeholder somewhere, and we're basically taking what they need and converting that into code, because they can't do that themselves, or rather they don't have the time to do it themselves. And when I started understanding that, I started realizing that the reason why we write software, as I said, has nothing to do with these best practices. They are just guidelines to help us write sustainable code. But the thing that is always most important is to ship the feature on time, regardless of what that means. You can absolutely set expectations and explain that, all right, in order for me to meet this sharp deadline here, I need to hack things together and make sure that your stakeholders understand that. But at the end of the day, the feature request and the limitation of the situation is what they are. I mean, there are tons of situations where, all right, I would like to do things in a certain way, but I simply can't, because there are either legacy systems to take into account, or things are already working in a certain way and I can't really do whatever I want. I have to solve the problem within the context that I am given. So when I realized this, I understood that it's not about learning the best, necessarily always knowing how to do things in the best manner. It is about understanding the problem and being the sort of person who understands how to solve a problem in the best manner possible, regardless of circumstances. In other words, if you have a greenfield project, you start from absolute scratch, the first thing you should consider is, or rather this is what they told me, the first thing to consider is the needs of the business, because the needs of the business and how the business works is the thing that is going to be most important when making the decision on which solution to go with. Because if you make a solution that isn't going to fit into the needs of the company, that's going to be a bad solution, even if it's using the most trendy technologies, even if it's using the best practices. Because unless those practices really fit well into the way the company works, they are just going to get in the way. And you're going for efficiency because you are there to solve problems on behalf of the company. Not just write code. The code is just a formality. They have a problem that needs to be solved in the way that will fit them the best. A mindset that I learned that was very useful was similar to this, where if I ask you to build a toaster, then I expect you to make me a toaster. I don't want you to build a spaceship. I don't want you to make a toaster that can talk or make cookies or something like that. Because if I wanted that, I would ask you to build that for me. I've asked you to build a toaster, so I expect you to build a toaster. I'm okay with you trying to build the best toaster that you can, given the circumstances and the limitations that I have imposed on you. But if you're trying to build more than a toaster, you have to check with me first, because I am your stakeholder and my happiness is what's paying your salary. When I understood that, I started to realize that what really matters is to meet expectations. If my company wants me to ship a feature in a certain amount of time, then I just need to accommodate that need. It's not about trying to write the best software necessarily. It's about writing the right software for that given situation, or rather making the best thing given my circumstances. So that lesson was a very valuable one, and I started understanding that when you take a step back from your code and you start to look at the needs of the business, then all of these things starts to make a lot of sense, and you will save yourself quite a lot of frustration, because it is very frustrating if you are an idealist and you want to write perfect software, and then you realize that nobody gives a shit about your perfect software. If it stands between your perfect software and the needs of the business will always win. Because the company is not about academics. They don't care about perfect software. The company cares about results, and getting results that are sustainable and on time is always going to win. So what I want you to take away from this is that for me personally, the biggest eye-opener that I had as a junior, that I was taught by my more senior coworkers, and I'm very grateful that I got this lesson very early in my career. It has saved me quite a lot of hassle, and I've actually gotten quite far just on this shift in mindset. Well, the thing that I learned was that you're not writing software for the sake of writing software. It doesn't matter if you have a perfect solution. What matters is that you have a solution that perfectly fits the situation you are in, or the context. The company wants a solution that fits their needs. So your thinking shouldn't be, how do I make this the best thing that I can make it? Rather, your thinking should be, how can I make this the best solution for this specific moment and for this specific company? In other words, if the company wants a toaster, you build a toaster. If they want a skyscraper, you build them a skyscraper. If they want a rocket ship, you build a rocket ship. Learning how to solve each problem, regardless of situation, in the best manner possible is the thing that's going to make you a master programmer. If you just know how to solve a problem in one trendy way or in one specific way, then you're not a master programmer, because a true master craftsman can solve each of the problems regardless of the context. So you need to think about not just learning how to do things in an advanced way or in a way that fits perfectly with best practices within our community as programmers, but rather also think about how to solve how do you write really dirty code in a nice way. That's the best way I can explain it. Learning how to solve a problem that is ugly in a nice way is also a talent in of itself. So in other words, write the right code for the situation. That's the biggest learning that I learned from my coworkers. Have a great day.